System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' inner city left.
This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Today is Thursday, November 21st. My name is Amin TMK, alongside with Amoja, Lil Tanky Sumler. My friend, hello. How are you? What is up?
Man, oof. I feel like sometimes people think we just be trying to be alarmists when really, man, we be holding back how wild the moments actually be.
And I don't think we're going to have to I don't think we're going to be called alarmists in the next few weeks, because it looks like the thing that we've been begging our listeners and really everybody around us, and we've been trying to get them to focus on, is this war, the escalation that is Russia-Ukraine. I just want to talk a little bit about the last 24 hours, and I'm going to give it right to you, okay? Yeah, was it 2 days ago or 3 days ago, Joe Biden said, giving you long-range missiles to hit inside of Russia, possibly the final red line in this Ukraine-Russia conflict.
It's the only red line that Russia ever gave. All the other red lines are imaginary red lines that Americans imposed upon Russia. Russia's only ever had one red line, and that's don't allow missile strikes into pre-2014 Russia.
Old Russia, correct.
Or else.
So in response, we had I believe it was the Kursk region that was hit with both the ATACMS and the Storm Shadows. It's like, when you give a kid $10
the
and they say it
ATACMS were
burns
out
up.
of Kursk. It wasn't even the theater of conflict. Yeah. Now the Storm Shadows hit Kursk. But the ATACMS, it was 6 ATACMS that were fired. It was in the area, but not far. You know what I'm saying? It technically speaking, it wasn't in the Kursk region.
Okay, so it was, but they did hit Russia proper, right?
And they hit Russia proper.
So,
yeah.
So now we have just 12 hours later, Russia, the big bad that you've been talking about for some time, the Big Merv over there, they sent a Merv, and you can talk more about that, into the Dnipro region. They talk about this because it can be used as a nuclear delivery system, but was used for more conventional weapons. Right now, we're not exactly sure where the escalation is. Obviously, it's still a fluid situation. What is your take on the last 36 hours between Russia, Ukraine, Joe Biden, so on?
Look, the other thing that we're going to talk about on the second half of this podcast, unfortunately, is, it's the biggest story in the world, but it doesn't need to be. The biggest story in the world is what happened in Ukraine last night, because that's the thing that the politicians are the most afraid of really getting out there. Merv has never been used in a theater of war before. What happened last night? No intercontinental ballistic missile has ever been fired into a war zone. Intercontinental ballistic missiles and Mervs are meant solely for one type of, look, of course it's dual use, and that's what they did last night. But Merv is meant to demonstrate your nuclear capability. An ICBM is meant to demonstrate a nuclear missile that can go anywhere in the world. When you hear Ukraine talking about give us the missile defense to resist, there is no defense against Merv. So what is Merv? Merv is multiple independent, targetable reentry vehicles. You put all of these warheads, okay, think like a warhead like a finger, okay, on top of a missile, one missile. The missile flies up and it gets to a trajectory to where it wants to be. It leaves the atmosphere, man. It goes into space.
Wow.
Right? And can be from any place to any other place on Earth in less than an hour, right? Some places are significantly less time. Some ICBMs can be anywhere they need to be in 30 minutes, okay? This is not a weapon you use randomly. This is not a weapon you use lightly. You are demonstrating your intent to utilize a nuclear weapon. It is the most serious warning you can give someone before you nuke them. The MIRV has never been used in battle before. The ICBM has never been fired before, right? Both of those things happened. It wasn't just an ICBM, which is dangerous enough. It was a MIRV. And MIRVs, although you can put conventional weapons on them, they're meant explicitly for nuclear weapons. It's not the kind of thing where you blow Hiroshima up. It's the kind of thing where you blow several cities up at once. At once.
Yeah, I mean, you think about the nuclear technology, you know, I think about the 50s. And obviously technology has, you know, gone through an exponential growth since then, and the capacity for destruction and cataclysm is so much more even than the nuclear weapons of the 50s. I don't really know exactly what to bring up next, but it does look like Biden and Zelensky and Blinken and Ken Starmer came out, you know, talking about this when people are like, because obviously the UK is like, what are we doing? Because they're directly involved because the Storm Shadow is British, right?
There was a reporter that asked them, you know, and I was so amazed. It's like, so do you believe that you should be talking about the danger of nuclear war, perhaps, with your population, right? Because this is clearly, right? So this is a demonstration of Russia's intent. Remember, it was less than a week ago that the strategic force agreement, the framework of the Russian military changed their nuclear doctrine and they changed their posture. We talked a little bit about this on Inner City Left, right? But let me break down for you what that really means. So what the new posture of Russia is, what their stated goal as it relates to war is, if they are attacked by a non-nuclear power, right, that is allied with a nuclear power, and that non-nuclear power utilizes a weapon from that nuclear power, they will hold the country they're at war with, Ukraine, the supplier of the technology, in this case, the United States or Britain, and all of their military allies responsible. So this is an incredible posture change. This is deadly fucking serious, right?
And when does it become real? Like, when do we not become alarmists? It's just such a silly thing as 500, possibly 500,000 Ukrainians have died. Another 600,000 have been permanently injured. 80,000 Russians at least. I mean, there's obviously been a huge toll already. And it kind of feels as if like, oh, well, do you remember they asked like, oh, during the presidential debates, they asked, do you believe that Ukraine can win this war? And it's like, this is the silly propaganda that we have to fight up against.
It's just unrealistic.
Not only can they not win the war, they've already lost it. Putin has already grabbed everything that he said he wanted for the special military operation. The liberation of the Donbass, the Crimea was already, had already voted to enter into Russia. So there's really nothing that they can do.
It's historically Russian. It's ahistorical.
You know what else
Crimea Russian.
Is historically Russian? Ukraine. And I think that, again, it just goes back to the point that you mentioned. Don't get involved in civil wars. It's not about y'all.
What is the Russian mafia called, right? Again, we're Inner City Left, so we talk that gang shit. What is the Russian mafia called? Little Odessa, right? So don't tell me that there is a difference between Ukrainian culture and Russian culture at a fundamental level. Yeah, there are differences. Their languages are based on the same Cyrillic. It's based from the same language groups. Some of you have children that are older than Ukraine as a country. If they're older than a certain age, everybody there was born in the Soviet Union.
Let's not remember the ancient peoples, the Kievan Rus.
The Kievan Rus.
So, yeah, I mean, again, it just goes to the point where why is the UK, why is the United States, why is, Switzerland or whatever, all these different little European countries that want to throw their 2 cents in, Why are you choosing sides on a civil war many miles away from some of these countries? And, if you're like
Ukraine
a
has no
reporter,
cultural ties to Britain. I mean, they just don't.
yeah.
It's foolish to act like they do. It's foolish to act like there was a Ukrainian culture and it was part of the grand European experience. It never was. That never happened. That's never been a thing. It's a thing they wish to happen. And I get it. You want to peel off this part of old Russian culture, right? Something that had ties to the whole Russian style of what it means to be European, right? But that's not worth risking the end of the world for. I have to say again, a lot of people will look at what happened with the Iranian missile strike against Israel. And if you were to ask me which is more dangerous, Iran sent over 200 missiles to hit Israel. Israel's not very big. They sent hypersonic missiles. It's not nearly close. Russia sent one missile. And it's not even nearly close. You know what's better than hypersonic? Intercontinental ballistic missile. It is literally the most dangerous weapon system in the world that exists on the planet.
I talked a little bit about this. We always have arguments on our Inner City Left page on Instagram. Follow us, please, about anytime I post about China or, God forbid, I say something nice about Vladimir Putin or Nicolas Maduro. Very upset and very mad.
Why are liberals still following Inner City Left? Look, I get it. If you're here to learn, that's cool. But be quiet.
Well, they know better than us. They watched a white woman cry when Donald Trump won. Okay, so let me get this question out, and then I'm going to give it all to you, and you can have it all. So you got Zelensky, and he basically, so when Maduro was elected, when he voted, he walked out of that voting booth, put the peace sign up, and he said, "Free Palestine." Okay? And when the Maduro opposition finished with their voting, they came out and they said Israel has a right to defend itself. Now, you can make a decision based off that on who you want to support. Let's talk about who supports Palestine. Russia, China, Venezuela, Cuba, Vietnam, Ireland. I mean, okay, Ireland is the only country that I really mentioned that is from the West, And it just seems to me,
Spain. To be fair, Spain.
Yeah, they got in late.
Spain is complicated, but they absolutely recognize Palestine as a nation. Yeah.
Thank God the Muslims were there. It just, again, it goes back to the point of, I'm not saying like I love Russia. I've never been to Russia. I don't really even know that many Russian people.
I ain't got a dog in that fight.
All I'm saying is, look who supports Palestine. And look who doesn't. If it's a litmus test, like all the liberals and everyone says, if it is a true litmus test, then why do you not support the countries? If Iran is so bad, why are they supporting Palestine? If Hezbollah,
let's be honest. Iran is facing potential nuclear retaliation from the United States and several other nuclear powers, declared and undeclared, I might add, to defend Palestine. That is more than lip service. Some of y'all couldn't even stand strong enough to vote against genocide. So don't act like it's the same. What Iran does to support Palestine is on a whole nother level than what the average American is capable of understanding.
Raise your hand if you didn't vote for genocide. Raise your hand.
I didn't vote for genocide.
Let's talk about this other big news story, and there's just so much, and I wanted to throw that in there because I thought it would be a good segue. So the International Criminal Court has issued a warrant for the arrest of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former, by the way, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. This is breaking news. Just came out this morning. There's a lot of news surrounding it. What was your initial reaction? What do we know? What are your thoughts?
Straight Macy Gray. I want to see that warrant.
I want to see that warrant.
I want to see that warrant. Yeah, no, look, man. It's important, and it's the biggest news story of the day. And I'm not saying it's not insignificant. The Americans are already, ballyhooing that it's unfair. All of the talking heads from Israel are out. Isaac, Herzog is out there, the president of Israel. All of the usual suspects, all of the American senators, Lindsey Graham has, condemned this ruling. But at the same time, it's not nothing, man. Either you care or you don't. Now, look, the United States is not a signatory nation to the Statute of Rome, which is what binds people to. See, y'all didn't know I had to hit y'all with that legal shit. That what binds nations to be, bound to those conventions, right? But the EU is. The EU absolutely is. So Joseph Borrell, not an insignificant figure, straight up said, if you are in the EU, you are bound to arrest this man if he flies there. Now, look, what does this mean? It means Bibi probably will not fly to Europe. He's going to be shunned for the rest of his life. Look, whether or not he's ever arrested, this is like that thing, when the government only had a couple of names of like people that couldn't go to Vegas. You know what I'm saying? Al Capone is in there. Like having your name in that book, you're shunned for life. Bibi Netanyahu's name is now shunned for life. This is in history. It is historically written that somewhere court systems looked at what he was doing and said, this man is responsible for genocide, or at least we suspect he is, and we need to have him in court. This in theory should bind Europe to change the way that they're able to deliver their weapons, right? There's lots of statutes on the book that say you can't provide weapons to a country that is suspected of taking part into a genocide. Again, these were the laws that European nations wrote because they wanted to punish African nations. You know what I'm saying? But now these laws are coming back to bind so-called white nations, perceived white nations like Israel. It legally is a very big deal. But again, Putin got that same warrant and Putin goes wherever the fuck he wants. You know what I'm saying? So, we'll see what it is, because please understand, Israel could easily argue that to enforce that warrant is to declare war on Israel. And that's not a thing without political value. It'd be very interesting. And Israel is an unstable nation that can't be told no, But at the same time, Bibi Netanyahu is not a courageous man. He's not going fly to fucking Paris and be like, put my dick on the table. What the fuck you going to? Like, Bibi is very strong in front of a podium, but he's not the kind of man that takes literal risks. You're not going to see him fly to London no time soon. You're not going to see him fly to Germany and be like, arrest me. He not that dude, man. He ain't got that kind of courage, and Yoav Gallant, he's in the worst of both worlds. You've been fired by Bibi, you know what I'm saying? And really, this could turn into one of them situations over who snitched who out, because there's no love lost between either of them, and before anybody gets on here, look, there were definitely warrants issued against Palestinians as well. Okay. Unfortunately for you, we'll never be able to have so-called justice. They won't be able to have their day in court because the IDF has assassinated them. So this isn't like, oh my God, the ICC is just picking on little old Israel. Lots of people had warrants fall down today. And just some of them people might not even be alive. And we can't even verify that easily because Israel is committing a genocide.
I think that places like the UN, places like the ICC and the ICJ, countries in of themselves, to maintain the appearance of morality or the appearance of usefulness, and seeing that what is happening in Gaza right now and soon to be the West Bank and the war against the Northern Resistance, as well as bombs in Syria. I mean, it's everywhere. To retain that that ethical stand in the world, you have to at least try to bring to account Israel. And we've seen this, and I'm a big kind of like a critiquer of the sort of UN system and all that other stuff, but it does seem like everybody in those positions are doing everything they can to
Don't worry,
push.
not for the constant efforts of the United States to derail this shit. I mean, once again, in the Security Council just yesterday, there was a vote for a ceasefire. Once again, and that ceasefire even demanded that Hamas release all of the hostages. Language that the United States said is the reason why they could never go for any of these ceasefires before, because it doesn't blame Hamas for all of the horrible things that they've done. Well, this one did that. It did all of that language that they said. And it said, those guys got to release the hostages and Israel has to come to a ceasefire. Once again, only nation in the world. Vote no, veto, United States. And again, this is not Trump's United Nations. This is Biden's United Nations. This is Kamala Harris's United Nations. No Republicans had anything to do with this. This is all Democrats.
Yeah, and it looks like we're going to be ramping up for the Democrat finger pointing over the next 4 years at least. You see all the little representatives out here talking about how bad, Donnie J's cabinet is, which of course it is. Like, what did you expect?
They try to get a suspected pedophile.
Oh, right. And we should say that we thought Matt Gaetz was going to be getting involved. It looks as if they were like cutting that out. So Matt Gaetz, he resigned from he's out of here. So,
this
but
man
I'm sure
got up and gave a speech about the F-35 as a paperweight. Boy, you're done. They're never gonna let you. The military. Look, even if you hadn't done it, which you probably did it, right? If that had been the only thing you ever done, you was roasted, bro. Moment you got up and called the F-35 a paperweight, you're done. You're not going no further than you went.
Yeah, and it will be somebody with similar viewpoints. I mean, something that I remember Matt Gaetz talked about was the situation in Niger where, he said that, I think he even mentioned F-35s. He's like, we bring in those F-35s. We'd come in there. We'd protect those American military bases. And, I think that is another thing that the Trump cabinet will really want to do is like focusing back on some of these smaller conflicts. If you take the Matt Gaetz selection, even though he resigned, thing in any terms of policy, I think you could see again like AFRICOM things like that ramping up.
It's Conor McGregor fighting Donald Cerrone. You want to fight, you can win. It's hard to get mad at that. I understand it.
Yeah. I just want to give a shout out to our podcast listeners. We're available everywhere you find podcasts, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, so on and so forth. We have a Patreon, which you can be a part of. Yes, it's so nice. We have a little community budding there, patreon.com/innercityleft. I want to give a shout out to our patrons because they're cool. They're the coolest people I know. And you could be a cool person too. So let's first of all give out a big shout to Nat the Rat, Lucy Newman, Samantha Guerrero, Dumpy, Tom LeBeau, Turn Leftist, Dubsy22, Nicole Hedges, J Willard 94, No Ground RK, Paulo La Ponderosa, Lisa Piercy, Lauren Bullock, Suzette Tav, and Dennis Amadeus. I thought this was going to be a longer episode, but it just kind of is like so cut and dry. I don't know like what else to say.
Look, more than ever, you need to be tight with your tribe and make sure that your tribe can do all of the things that people might have to do. Because we live in wild times. Everyone talks about how dangerous Trump is, and he is extremely dangerous. But I cannot undersell you the danger we are in this moment when Russia is firing ICBMs. They're not going to continue to give warnings. This is the last. You should think of this as the last warning. And it really sends home why this Ukraine thing is done. To continue to push the Ukraine thing is to risk the death of life on Earth. Not underselling. Inner City Left.
Yeah. And I just want to say this too. Like, if you find yourself constantly siding with the West over the global majority, please reevaluate your stances, because none of these countries are predominantly white except Russia. None of these countries are pro-Israel, even though Russia has one of the largest populations of Jewish people
in the world.
They still support Palestine. Yes. So please ask yourself why the countries that we're supposed to dislike, like Cuba and Venezuela and Peru and Bolivia, and why am I supposed to Venezuela? Why am I the Sahel states? I mean, we can keep going. Where they're predominantly people of color, why would I side with white people in the West over them? For Emotional Tanky Stumbler, I am Amin TMK. This is the Inner City Left broadcast.
Decolonize.
Peace.
System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' Inner City Left.